Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is, what is today? October 4th, 2024. And we're yet again here looking at Bitcoin. And this is the daily chart as usual. We're going to follow up with where we left off on Wednesday. You'll have to forgive me. I've been talking all day. I'm kind of losing my voice. But, essentially Bitcoin played out exactly the move that was described. And this was not something that was news driven. Bitcoin had already put in the high before some of the news hit. So I'm going to answer that question right off the bat that I've gotten from many. Typically, when you have bad news in world events or market shaking news, you'll typically see that there's either highs or lows that are already put in. That doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Sometimes it will put in a high or a low. But whenever we see news after something's already confirmed, like the actual Monday down candle, Sunday into Monday. Now, yes, some of the news was kind of baking, but everything was already kind of telling us that markets were ready to head down. There was other things happening. I'm going to show you here on DXY here in a moment, but that were already kind of pointing towards, a little bit of a shift in market structure, at least on the daily. And when I say market structure, I just mean in terms of the trending upside structure for Bitcoin here that I'm referencing. But the high was in on Monday. We got some news on Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday that was not so good in terms of world events, but realistically, it just caused some lower term time frame volatility. A fairly large candle down off of the pivot zone here into the recover zone, which is 63.8 to around 60,000 to 60,300, depending on your chart, if it's derivatives or spot. But we were expecting this move anyway. Some of the criteria that we were looking for was any kind of closes back below 50. I keep saying 50. Bitcoin spent so much time in the 50s that I'm stuck there still. But in this case, 65,500. We saw the close open from Sunday into Monday, kind of closing right at the edge there. Then lower term timeframes dipped down. We got that close below 63.8. And I had mentioned, safe pullback areas for immediate continuation to the upside would have been 61.8 to 62.8 here off of this high. Otherwise, we were pretty much targeting right down here at the bottom side of the recover zone. Wicks below are fine. Closes below is where I would have started to look for further downside to 58,400 here. But we did see Bitcoin kind of test in and around the upper $59,000 region on the low here. This low is now set. This is both a closing low and a swing low set. So we do have that in place. This is a higher low on a close. Yes, there is a little bit of swinging uptrend structure that was broken here. This is realistically just one move up, right? So we have the higher low down here at 57.5 on the wick or swing, 58,200 on the close. That nice push up to the high here at 66,550 with the close coming in slightly above the pivot zone there at 65, almost 800. And then a nice pullback to a high-low structure. So naturally, we would be expecting this to actually head back up and at minimum, try to test up somewhere around the highs. But that's only going to happen if we see a few certain conditions met. Closes back above 63.8. If it hasn't already closed, medium-term timeframes below the daily, like a 4 or 6 hour above 63.8, and testing further up, I would need to see a daily closing above 63.8. So above there, 63.8 to 64K, we look right back to 65. Of course, this is the first high from 2021, that area at $65,000 in a swing on a daily, monthly, and weekly, or daily, weekly, monthly time frame. And then, of course, after Bitcoin broke out of the local structure here and that historical structure that's not pictured here on this particular chart, it pushed into the pivot zone, lost it, came back down, retested the recover zone. So I would be looking essentially for 63.8 to 64K, 65, and then push back up to the pivot zone to test this high. Now, where does that kind of fall apart? What would the conditions be? Lower term time frame closes back below 59, 825 now, or 824, would do it. Even lower term time frame closes that start to get around that $60,000 region again by the bottom side of the recovery zone. Danger, danger, danger. We're probably looking at a lower high and likely threatening to break this particular uptrending structure. And, that's where I would start to look at 58.4 to the 55.850 level again as a key area of interest to hold up. And of course, below there, down to the 53.5 level. Now, of course, this is the big wick down, that second move down of this entire range or consolidation structure or reaccumulation structure, if you like. At 53.5, we haven't seen any closes below there. So again, same criteria. I wouldn't want to see any closes below there. I guess you could say as long as it's staying above the last low on a close, it's fine, right? Because then it's implying that it's not moving lower except on lower term time frames. As long as it's not closing below 52,500, then it's kind of safe. But I still wouldn't want to see closes for the bulls below 53.5. That'd be pretty brutal. And essentially, I would be looking for that low to get tested there at 52.5 down to the actual wick low inside of this target one of distribution between $53,000 and $50,000. That wick low at 49K is now fair game as part of that area. Any closes below there, I'm looking for distribution down further. Do I think that that's the more likely thing to happen? No. I mean, quite honestly, just put in a daily higher low again. But I will tell you that I always exercise caution when we see price action like this coming into a weekend, right? Essentially, this local structure that was just set just below the $60,000 region, if that's lost at any point next week, it's kind of over for this particular move, and we're looking for further downside. I don't like weekends. I don't like closes like this on the weekends. It's pretty typical that we get some kind of a reversal off of the weekends lately. And, if the range, if there's no volatility over the weekend, then I would start to look at early next week for some volatility to re-enter the market. But from here, I mean, over the weekend, I would want to see bulls trying to push back to the upside, at least test around 63.8, 64K and higher. If we don't get that, maybe it chops around on the lows here as long as it's holding just below that $60,000, then, just below, what is this, 59,800 or something. As long as it's holding above there on a closing basis, then, still a valid higher low structure. And then we come back to it when things start getting interesting again. Now that's basically the structure that I wanted to talk about here on the actual trending structure and as it relates to support and resistance. Let's take a look at volatility now with the Bollinger Bands. Bitcoin's still living below the basis band, which is a 20 simple moving average, and hugging that lower first standard deviation, which, as I've mentioned, is what I'd want to see after kind of reversing structure on the daily like this. But I do want to see it, pushing back through the basis at around 62,800, which is essentially this high right here, to that 63.8, then pushing up to $65,000. Go figure, that's where the upper first is. And then right back into this structure up here, the high structure right around that upper second standard deviation in the pivot zone between 65.5 and 67,272. Above there, I'm looking 68 to 70 in the run the highs above here zone, which is the first lower high of the third major downtrend. Or no, this was the second major downtrend. Let me look. 1, 2. Yeah, sorry. This is the second major downtrend's first lower high. Just like we have the pivot zone first lower high of the first major downtrend. And again, for anyone that's new, you're going, no, these are lower highs up here. Let's go ahead and get rid of the Bollinger Bands for just a second because they're not really needed right now. I just wanted you to see the confluent areas. Yes, we had lower highs here in the context of an uptrending structure. Then we had a trend break to the first major lower high of that first downtrend. That defined our pivot zone. And then the first major high of the second downtrend defined our run the highs above here zone. So essentially above 68 to 70, I would be looking 70 to around 72 at these highs over here as kind of the no man's land zone between major areas of interest. And if we did start to see closes above 72, then it's realistically just the highs at the 73, 835 and higher for it to work through. that brings us to me hitting my desk with my knuckles, and that hurt. Let me go ahead and take a look at momentum. So we talked about trend, support and resistance, volatility. Momentum now is the last piece that I like to look at here for the daily. 64,681. Now this is nice. If Bitcoin can hold, one, it just put in higher low structure, so that's good. If it can hold, kind of sideways and keep heading up, we'll likely see this get a nice reset. Even if it doesn't beat this number out today, which is just a daily number. So this will update day by day. 64,684. So basically 64.7, almost $65,000. Of course, if we start seeing Bitcoin closing above 63.8, that's a good thing. We're going to see that likely turn up no matter what. Even if it doesn't meet the criteria of today's pivot number for a stochastic momentum indicator like that. Now, the other thing to pay attention to is we did get a continuation drive here of bullish divergence, otherwise known as a hidden bull div. So that was the area that I was calling out, that from this low to this low. If we were going to see a low, likely getting that hidden bull div. Now, bring that over to the 12-hour, which was one of the ones that I was waiting for. All of the same trending structure stuff is going to apply for the same areas. The difference here on the 12-hour is that this is I guess this was just the same kind of thing. It was a trend break. So if it closes back above the highs here at that 66,550, we will see this as a deviation of trend. But even if the 12-hour does make like a lower high and then ping pong around to higher low structure, I'm not worried about it. It's not going to really paint that way on the daily. But in this case, nice move down on the 12-hour, perfect close open structure right at that 63.8, and then boom down to the bottom side of the level. I love to see it every time. When you see price action act like that in the live auction, that's how you know you got your levels bang on. What was I looking for? Oh, yes. So this low over here, which was the first higher low structure of this trending move up, technically is a swing higher low, first closing higher low structure. And on the daily, that is the higher low structure there, right at 57.5 there. We do have hidden bullish divergence between those 2 points on the 12-hour as well. So we do have those continuation drives in play. And what did I mention the last time? Look for a reset if we see a low set of stochastic momentum. And we have seen that 60,500 to 600 is roughly going to be the pivot zone for the 12-hour Stoch. So one of the things that I really am cautious about on the weekend is, like, if Bitcoin just spins its wheels in a range, you do start to see the picture change on those lower term timeframes. And then we have to really look for our criteria to the upside or downside being met in tighter and tighter ranges for trend as it relates to support and resistance and expansion of volatility. So simply though, you don't want to see it closing back below $60,000, right? And you want to see 63.8 to 64K recovered, go and grab that 65 and start running the highs again. Looks good. What is the 4-hour looking like? 4-hour looks okay. I would like to see some higher low structure, develop from this. So far, it's just kind of a low being set and a nice little breakout. So we do have, swing lower lows, closing higher lows with a closing higher high. So I do want to see higher low structure develop from here on the 4-hour. It is kind of, stretching itself out, not doing too much in terms of momentum here. The breakout was clean, but it's not like just rocket fueling its way back to the top side. So, and coming into weekends where it typically is lower liquidity, I'd want to see this come all the way back down or get a nice bullish reset and try to push up to this top side here, 61,330 or so. It's going to be the pivot there. So just some interesting things to kind of point out here. Structure hasn't really changed. The news hasn't really had much of an effect on this. It just exacerbated this downside move. Daily's looking like it get a nice bullish reset off of this higher low structure if it can hold. And essentially, 59.8 is the number to hold here on the downside. So above there, good. Below there, probably looking for 58.4 and lower at the top side of the risk zone all the way down to that 55.850. Doesn't have to go all the way down there, but at minimum, I would be looking for 58.4. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what I would like to see on some of the longer term time frames here. Let's go to the weekly. Weekly looks fine. I will tell you that although it looks fine, I would like to see this closing back above last week's low at 62,500. So, excuse me. Yeah, I don't really like the look of this, but like I said prior in many of my videos, this is a trend break. It doesn't mean that we're just going to green candle our way to the moon. Let's go ahead and get rid of support and resistance stuff here and just kind of talk about this for a moment. I'm going to point out a few things, right? We talked about the character change on the weekly. So we have this, higher high, higher low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, but a higher low on a close, lower high, lower low on a close, but a higher low swing. And I had mentioned prior to the actual $65,000 close last week that I need to see at minimum higher low structure develop from here on a swing basis or a closing basis. Because we have a higher low swing, another higher low swing will be acceptable. So like if Bitcoin were to put in a candle like this and then just green candle its way up, great. That would look pretty good. But a closing high, which this would be a closing higher high, to a closing higher low or a swing higher low is just fine as well from here. So, it's taking its time working itself out. I know it's frustrating for many. Let's go ahead and look at a few different things. So it's kind of already tentatively painting this high. It's not locked in. The weekly's not closed, but it's already painting this high as in, which to be quite honest, the daily and the weekly, like I said, if it drops 59,800 or basically $60,000, we're likely looking at it heading down further, which would solidify this high. And any closes below 62,566, which is the low of last week, will also confirm this swing high and a closing high, which normally would imply, tests lower at minimum to the low of this week and possibly lower. If we see the low of this week drop, then we would be looking at those downside areas and further tests down into this zone here. I would want to see higher low structure remain, but that doesn't always, that we don't always get what we want, right? But so far, it's not bad. I'm not like sounding any alarm bells. It is tentatively painting as a high right now. Weekly for momentum looks good. Remember, it's only a trend break off of a higher low swing. It was a lower low close, so we still need to see things develop. 58,700 is going to be the pivot for the weekly. So realistically, bulls, you want to get off your asses and kind of try to pick this up this coming week. Maybe even start over the weekend if you want to avoid troubled waters, let's say. Oh man, that's not a good thing to say. I've been watching too much stuff about North Carolina. For anybody that's out there, you're probably not watching this, but if you are, I hope you're okay. I hope your family's safe. Let's see. Let's go to, what else did I want to look at? Oh, Dixie. Yeah, we wanted to look at Dixie. We should probably look at the volatility levels of interest as well. The support and resistance is going to be the same as called out. We already talked about trends. So we'll talk about volatility. Yes, we went out of order and looked at momentum already, but yeah. So I'd mentioned that, Bitcoin's kind of in a range between the bands. As long as it's, between the lower second and upper second, not much is happening. We do want to see, the structure change is nice, the break of the lower high over here. But, realistically above, 53,600, 53,500 area, it's looking fine. Any closes below there, we're looking at testing, minimum $52,500 to $49,000 fair game on expansion below the lower second. Upper second is right around the closing highs, closing all-time high there at 71,300 basically. Above there, we're looking at the highs and higher essentially, and expansion to the upside. And that's blue skies. I would be looking at that as, essentially, even if it were to come back down and test a little bit more, I'd be looking at that as, essentially the run is likely on. But, these levels of interest for the bands here as it is set up in a range are pretty are going to act as those natural support and resistances as they line up with, areas of support and resistance, horizontal support and resistance on the dailies and stuff. Like the upper first is right there at our 67, it's like 67, 170 almost. Now that's right at the top side of that pivot zone between 65.5 and 67,272 that I was just calling out, essentially where Bitcoin kind of headed and put in its highs from last week. So now this lower first standard deviation is down here at 58, almost 200. That is right around the risk zone, the top side of the risk zone at 58.4. So right around there. And I will tell you, I do want to see Bitcoin closing above the basis. That would be good. Not that it's like a death sentence, but from a volatility perspective, it does make at least this current week's low in play, and then down to the lower first at minimum would be in play. The basis band is at that 62,675, so almost 62,700. That just on the daily, just for context, I know we pointed this out already a few times at this point, but that is this high right here, right around 62.8, which is also the daily basis band. So we have confluence between the daily basis band and the weekly right now. So you do want to see that area closed above, hopefully by Sunday. We'll see how that goes. And then let's go ahead and look at DXY, because DXY is doing something interesting, and it was kind of warning us that a lot of this stuff was happening. I don't typically talk about DXY, but it got to a major area, and I've been watching it closely since it got to this major area. You'll see that I've had this chart marked up for a long time for those of you that have been watching me and remember when I was even calling out all the DXY chart stuff on a regular basis. But let's go ahead and just turn off the bands. They're adding a little extra noise that we don't need. But on the bottom side here, you can ignore the midline. That was for more shorter term time frame stuff. But on the weekly, you can see the level between 99.57 and this low right here at $182. So $100.82. So DXY trades against a basket of currencies, and in this case, put in a really aggressive closing low on the weekly, targeting the 103 to almost 104 level right here. Now from a weekly perspective, this is more of an intermediate level. So if you just look left, there is resistance right before that level around 102.65 or so. That's this low right here. That's the most immediate recent low. It almost got there, like within pennies. And it's already closed above all of these lows, including this guy here. So the next low to recover for bulls on DXY is 102.74 right here. Above there, we're looking, 103 essentially to 103, almost 104. I mean, quite honestly, it's just looking left over here at some of these highs, which is essentially 104 to 104.25. So 103 to 104.25. Right in this high, right around this high. And if it recovers this low right here from this, we had this uptrending structure on the weekly that failed at this high. And then we had a higher low, lower high, and then just a sell off. Now, because this is a major trend break, even though it's getting a nice pump, I would be looking naturally for lower highs because this is a big downtrend break. But if we were to start to see it recover 104.50, then this lower high is fair game right here around that 106. So just something to watch for. Like naturally, I would be looking for this to cool its jets a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's going to. Structurally, when we have a big downtrend break like this, I would be looking for lower highs on any moves back up. So that is my natural inclination. And from a structural point of view, that's what you have to look for. And you'll note that there is an area of interest right above that 104 area, 103.82, right around the 104 to 104.25 region, because there is a nice swing low to swing high here. That's a big area of interest right here. So that's 103.65 to almost 105 at 104.80 actually. So this would be a warning sign if this gets recovered, because this is right around this low here at 104.50. So that'd be a warning that this lower high right here is in danger around the 105.85 on a close to 106 area. So bulls are going to want to recover that for Dixie, and bulls for Bitcoin do not want to see that recovered. I will tell you that even if it was, I mean, this is a nice W for winter. It's got some distance from the bearish control zone. It looks strong. But again, I still have to look for lower highs. There was a structure break. So, but in the grand scheme of things, this is just a big range. So, eyes on. Maybe we'll keep a closer eye on this as things develop in the coming weeks. This is coming out of the extreme read for the bearish control zone on Stoke. 100, so 101 is going to be the pivot. That should update. It's probably closer to like 125 or 150 cents or so when that does update on Sunday. It does open with CME. So interesting. Now this is what I was watching, was for a bounce, especially on the dailies, and we did get exactly that. Now it's coming right into overhead resistance, so we'll see how this works out for the Dixie bulls here. On the daily, it did hit that daily resistance, pulled back ever so slightly. I would watch this structure right here on the daily for Dixie coming into next week. So if it can regain essentially this daily low that got tested at 102.67, then I would start looking into 103 and this high right here at 103.54. So this structure right here on the daily, which is going to be a little bit different. This is that weekly structure above it that I was talking about. But from the daily perspective, coming into the early portion of next week, is keep an eye on this structure right here. So this low to lower high structure. And in fact, I'm going to mark that just for myself so that I'm not just doing work again. We'll color it a little bit differently so I know it's the daily. Yeah, we'll just put it like that. So there is some major resistances in there as well. So something to keep an eye on coming in next week. Now, usually the question is like, wow, this all sounds kind of bearish. Are you bearish on Bitcoin, like overall? No, I'm not. Bitcoin's going to be fine, even if it heads to the downside. And I'm going to leave you with why. We're going to talk about a few different things here to end with. So beware. The next chart here that I'm going to show you is Caparelli.com. It's blindingly white. We're going to switch over in 3, 2, 1. All right, so floor for electrical cost is down, hovering just above $42,000 at $42,113. In any kind of a crash scenario, this is likely the area that I'd be looking for price to head to. Doesn't mean it would get there, but if it starts to just shoot through levels because there's some sort of like global liquidity event, then that is what I'd be looking for. If you see it under that number, guess who's buying there? Miners, because if they can get Bitcoin for less than it costs for them in their electricity, then they're also there buying. Good luck getting an order in under there. That's usually not something that happens too often. And again, a little bit of history. We only see it even around electrical cost, around bear market lows, and just post-halving before we see some correction in terms of the hash rate competition, not hash rate difficulty in this case, but hash rate competition, which does cause difficulty to go up, which raises electrical cost. So it is technically difficulty going down because you're not having as much competition for hash rate. But for context, again, if we look back here in 2018, barely touching that level at the electrical cost at the bear market low, and in an extreme scenario, holy crap, that was tough to say. In an extreme scenario like the March of 2020 dump off, what did it touch? Electrical cost, and immediately pulled away. And then, of course, just post-halving, it hung around it for just a couple days before we saw difficulty come down on the network, which means that there was less competition on the network from miners. So, and usually that's, they're upgrading, they've been selling into it, taking some machines down, upgrading, getting new machines in. These days it's, often trying to merge miner, support layer 2s, whatever they can do to get more money. And in this case, it looks fine. I don't have a problem with this. Typically, you want to see Bitcoin kind of hanging around above production cost, and it is at 59,315. That's where total production cost is currently, so it's fine. No issue there. Let's look at open interest real quick on the daily. I want to see the daily real quick here. Or not. Oh, there it is. All right, so let's see. It got up to about that 20.5 billion in open interest, which was, essentially where it was when it spiked up that 68 to 70,000 on the close and the wick high there. And, dump off, low correction, open interest there. What level did it get to? It's still kind of a little bit higher than I'd like to see it in this area, but it's not anything too crazy. It's basically kind of where it's been for price, so it's not too bad. This is overall open interest. It's not exchange by exchange or coin margin open interest. It is everything. Let's go ahead and finish up with this actually. So this is some fundamental charts. This is Crypto Quant, and there's one that I want to show you because I think this is a fun one. And I was showing this for a while just as for reference for some friends of mine who understood it. But the price prediction based on realized cap has been a really good metric that they've utilized for a little while here over at Crypto Quant. And let's go ahead and full screen this. Give it a second. There we go. Now you see these bands. I think somebody had these on here as crystal ball bands. But you'll see that the green is essentially the floor price, and then the red is the ceiling price. And over time, it ticks up. And when we get expansion, essentially, you'll see that it caught the lows. This didn't readjust to catch the lows. It caught the lows like nearly directly. Floor price was 15.1. It got front run at 15.5 on spot price. And then you see the ceiling price over time. You see that was holding price down in 2021 into 2022. You'll see that prior cycles, it has ever so slightly wicked above it. Now, I say ever so slightly, but when you actually look at price above it, because it is log scale, it was quite big. But I just wanted to show you kind of where this is, because it is pretty accurate. This is not a be-all, end-all indicator, but it has been pretty accurate. Floor price $23,000, almost $24,000. That just so happens to be the last monthly high or low, as we still have not locked in that $49,000 wick as a higher low on the monthly. So it's still unconfirmed if it's going to be a higher low. And in this case, I highly doubt we would see price anywhere close to this current floor price. Ceiling price, though, is at $124,000. Keep that in mind for Monday, because I'm going to take a look at some fibs and show you where that lines up. You might remember where that lines up from a few videos ago as well. This is, when we had a younger asset back here, it was not as accurate, right? But as time has gone on, it's readjusted, ever so slightly lower back here in the 2015 to 2016 timeframes. But realistically, those are all great opportunities. So is this outside of the bands. These are great short opportunities. That doesn't mean that it can't shoot right through the top side. But it is pretty interesting how that interacts with price as a fundamental indicator. There is one other indicator that I like to use for fundamentals. And, it's kind of fundamentals technical analysis as well. Here it is. So the inter-exchange flow pulse. I'm not going to spend today analyzing this with it. I'll just give you the quick overview. It measures Bitcoin flows between spot and derivative exchanges using Crypto Quant's Bitcoin exchange flows data. So essentially what this is it's telling you like if Bitcoin is being used to lever up for more Bitcoin essentially, or if it's not. Now, inter-exchange flow pulse is the metric that they're using with a moving average. So red is when the IFP is below the 90-day MA. And that typically is, capitulation areas. And when looking at this, you can even see that it's had a couple recently. It's going to take a second to load here. But right now, it's looked good, essentially coming into the ETF launch. It doesn't pick it. This is just closes, by the way, so it's not going to pick up the wicks. But into the ETF launch high, all the way to the low there, it was actually below the 90-day moving average. Picked back up when we were around the highs and accumulating there. Started to turn red and then shot back up after this last couple of lows here, even coming into this week. So quite honestly, I'm not seeing any warning signs for further downside just yet. But yeah, that's just something that I wanted to point out there. There's a few fun things that we can always get into in the fundamental side of things if people are interested. But I'm going to leave you with that. You all have a wonderful weekend. And of course, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.